Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Judd Morgan, and I just finished watching episode 3 of Moon Knight, the friendly type. And I gotta say, it was the worst episode so far. It was so boring. Hardly a goddamn thing happened in it, and most of what did happen doesn't have any lasting consequences. You may think it does, especially with that finale, but even the thing with the consequence at the end was pointless. There were other options that didn't require that much of a dramatic send off to the episode and seemingly lasting consequences that will be immediately undone in the next episode. So, not even lasting consequences in that sense either. But there was just so much wrong with it. Beyond it was boring. What little action it had was rough. Like poorly choreographed, terrible CGI, and just even more so than normal. But before I get any farther, there will be spoilers ahead for this episode, so if you want to wait to watch the episode, definitely go do that beforehand, and then come back and watch the rest of this review. But yeah, overall, this entire episode was so much worse than the previous. And I only thought the previous two were okay, but this one I was very much like, oh shit, it's happening. It's happening. Disney is doing what they've done every other time that they've had one of these Disney Plus shows. They are falling down a rabbit hole. Maybe not just political, just shitty writing, because it wasn't a great episode. There was so much wrong with it. Again, the best parts that can be said about this are Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac. Both of them still bring their A game, and they are both very enjoyable to watch. But at a certain point, even actors can't save a dog shit script. There's still just too much to recover from. And I gotta say, I did not enjoy this one like the previous ones. Like the previous ones, it's like, yeah, not a waste of time. Glad I checked it out, all right. This one's like, man, I wish I would have stayed in bed this morning. It was so bad. But let's get into some more detail. So, yeah, Layla was still just as insufferable as she was in the first one. She was mean, she was dismissive, she was whining half the time, and when she wasn't whining, she was ordering around Moon Knight. And it's very inconsistent in these last two episodes whether or not she knows everything or knows nothing. Because she like flip flops all the time. She's like, you and Khonshu need to do this. Oh, Steven, you need to flip to him, as if she knows the mechanics already, even though she clearly doesn't and doesn't have an opportunity to really understand that mechanic. And then a few minutes later, she's like, what's going on? Like they want her to be the surrogate for the audience who doesn't know anything, but they also can't show her as that position of weakness in front of Mark as like the one with the less information. So they gotta show that she knows everything, but they need her to be the surrogate for information. But she knows everything, and it's like you're getting whiplash with all her fucking scenes. And it doesn't help that she's not likable in any way, shape, or form. And the only reason Steven likes her is because a pretty girl's talking to him, even if she's talking to him like he's a baby. So, yeah, not a fan of her in any way, shape, or form. She's just bitchy, to be honest, whining. It's just overall not a great character, and they further set up that she may be the next Moon Knight, and that won't be great. I'm not looking forward to that concept because, yeah, they're just gonna say, oh, really, she was better than Mark the whole time, but Khonshu was probably sexist and chose him first because he assumed that Mark would be better. Then we found out he was wrong. He's like, I need to be a feminist now, and I'm gonna leave Mark and go to the big strong woman. I fully expect that to happen at this point after everything that happened in this episode, but yeah, she's insufferable. And speaking of Khonshu, his dialogue, I didn't super notice it in the first one, or the first couple episodes, but I did in this one. His dialogue is really cheesy, like something a snappy middle school girl would use. It's like, I thought he thought. It was just really bad. It was really cheap dialogue that doesn't sound like an ancient deity would say. It doesn't have any gravitas to it. The actor has gravitas, but the lines, it's like, wow, are you playing a 10-year-old girl? Like, yeah, I don't know. It was just really crappy dialogue. And then the fight choreography, as I mentioned, was pretty bad, especially at the beginning in that dance fight. And they are setting up that there is at least one more personality, one that's very violent, maybe like the Beast from Split. And they're using that as an excuse to not fill in the gaps from the last few episodes, which I really wanted to do. And they're setting up this Beast personality to be the one who did all the super violent stuff and may not need that super concentration or permission from the other personalities to take control. Because Mark and Steven, they seem to have to be in agreement to switch, but this guy can just like jump in, murder a bunch of people, then jump out, no problem. So I'm not really sure what they're trying to say there. And yeah, not looking forward to the reveal that because of that monster inside of them, they're going to have to imprison themselves and hand over the mantle to Layla. And it'll be a metaphor for toxic masculinity, as was mentioned on the Real BBC the other day. That does make sense to me, and I very much see it. But the choreography, especially at the beginning and that weird dance fight that they had, that was very out of tone for the story. Very much not within the style the show had been setting up prior to that, so that just felt really off. And then the choreography, yeah, it was just like at one point Oscar Isaac just kind of goes and the guy's knocked out. That doesn't knock someone out. It was really, really bad. The CGI was even worse in this episode, especially with Khonshu. They showed him in daylight a few times, and yeah, in daylight you can really see how unrendered it was in a few different sequences. Not really a fan of that. And yeah, and Mark, oh God. I enjoyed Steven in the first few episodes, but I really tolerated him more than anything else because I knew or expected Mark to be the classic superhero type, the one who had his shit together, the one who, is, the more cliche superhero. And I feel like we need a cliche superhero at this point. One who's badass, one who's confident, one who's sure of himself, one who knows what he's doing, who can get stuff done. But that is very much not the Mark we got in this episode. This Mark, we saw him crying in one scene. He's on his knees several times, begging people. He just seems so out of his depth. And he is very much not the superhero that they were setting him up to be. Or even like the anti-hero. He's almost as much out of his depth as Steven, and just as worthless in these situations as Steven was, because Layla still has to order him around. So yeah, Mark I'm not liking at all, because he is not the character that he was supposed to be. He's not the badass he was supposed to be. He's quite pathetic and weak in so many situations. And yeah, I'm not really liking how they're portraying him. He's not turning out to be a good character as I'd hoped. So his character's not going to be saving this show as I hoped it would. And yeah, that's really all there to say about him. He's a very weak character that really doesn't bring a whole lot to the table. And there were a few minor things that don't really make when he was Moon Knight, his costume was bulletproof at one point, and then it wasn't spear-proof. That's really odd. Like, how is your future tech suit bulletproof but not spear-proof? I don't know. That was just dumb. It doesn't make any sense, and continuity people really don't. They just wanted some cool visuals, and I can't 100% blame them for wanting some cool visuals. I mean, like, sometimes you have to sacrifice realism for spectacle, and I get that balance, but it was just to such a degree that it was too far. It was too far, and the realism was shattered. Like, you can play around with realism, you can't shatter it. And that scene at middle end, where he's fighting a bunch of goons that he is overpowered by nearly immediately. So yeah, even Mark as Moon Knight can't take care of a few goons without extreme amount of effort and motivation by Layla ordering him around. So yeah, that was not a great sequence. The fight choreography in that sequence wasn't great as well, and the CGI was pretty bad as well. And yeah, overall, didn't really introduce anything. None of the consequences were really that much. There were other ways that they could have found where the tomb was buried. Like, they know how to find Harrow in the city. Like, there was a few times that they interacted with him. Just follow him or find some more henchmen. There were other ways to find out where Harrow was without all this, and there's no consequences. That whole spin-off of the black market dealer who's like, I offer you this power, and then everyone dies and they get their little pieces of paper or parchment or whatever they were, and then they go out in the desert. Like, nothing had any impact on the story except that last sequence, which will be undone very quickly in the next one. It's kind of hard to have a Moon Knight show without the capability of being Moon Knight. And I did like the visuals and the aesthetic of that sequence at the end, and tried to do a little bit of science stuff with turning back time, or at least the way the sky looked so that they could navigate. That was a cool idea, but there are heavy consequences to that decision, which make it very much the gods are right to imprison Khonshu after that, because that's going to have devastating consequences. You know how much of what our modern world is reliant upon star structure? And if you're changing the star structure, you're changing the very shape of the galaxy. If it were temporary, that was fine. They needed to show that it was being undone as soon as Khonshu was locked up, but they didn't show it as being undone. So our night sky still looks like it did 2,000 years ago now. And if they affected all celestial bodies, because even the moon was in a different place, so that's going to be affecting our tides on Earth. It's going to be affecting navigation. NASA is going to be in a fit, and even our distance from the sun may have shifted. I believe it shifted a little bit over that time. Our environment is going to be thrown into chaos from all those changes. And yeah, it's got far wider consequences than just, pretty lights are in different places. No, it's going to have some lasting consequences. And that's the only thing out of it that has any consequences. And it's going to be the only thing that is summarily ignored going forward, because I doubt they even realize those consequences. So they're not going to mention it. So yeah, everything else, literally no consequences going forward. And the one thing that really should have consequences going forward won't. So yeah, the continuity department really has no idea what they're doing, and it's just, god damn it. I did still like the visuals of that sequence, and the mirror. I did enjoy it. The music was good. That was a cool sequence, but they needed to undo it immediately or disaster. But they didn't think about that. So yeah, overall, didn't enjoy this episode really at all, and not really looking forward to any of them going forward. A lot more negative this time around than any previous episode. So we'll have to see if it, brings it back up to even the okay level it was before, or if it's going to continue downward. I expect it'll continue downward, as most Marvel shows do. Some of them start out good and then crash and burn, WandaVision being the perfect example of that. This is starting the crash and burn, in my opinion, at least. And we're barely halfway through, and we're already going downhill. So can't imagine how far we'll fall by the finale. But yeah, those are my pros and cons. I'd have to give this one a 4.5 out of 10. Like, it dipped significantly just because nothing made sense. It was all pointless. You're debasing Mark as a character. That's the unforgivable sin, and it was just really boring and pointless. Boring and pointless is how I would describe this episode as a whole. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.